Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast. I'm Tom Rennie, your host, and I would say friend. Alongside me, virtually, spiritually, but sadly not literally, is the star of Apple TV's much-watched MLS coverage. You know him as well from covering pointless US men's national team friendlies. It is Mr. Brian Dunny Dunseth. How are you, mate? You all right?
I'm good. How's the temperature right now at the Rennie household? Are we like Tom Henny, happy, or are we Tom Rennie, pessimistic and not so sure?
Well, look, I did make a promise to our listeners, and I'm going to fulfill that promise after this short anecdote about the Ammers this weekend, because I didn't watch the game. So it's been coronation weekend here in England, where we all pledged ourselves to be liege men of life and limb to King Charles III. God bless him and all who sail in him. Is he a boat? I'm not sure. Certainly seems like you could steer him. So it's been a big weekend, and I worked on the Fulham game against Leicester, which I want to talk about on today's show, which was just extraordinary. All of Monday's games were just nuts. So I want to talk about that. But on the Sunday, we had a whole kind of street party in our street because it was raining on Coronation Day. So street party got put back to the next day, which was annoying because I had plans on the actual day. So I was going to get out of going. But when it's happening directly outside your house, you're kind of obliged to go out and have
nowhere to run.
Someone gave me a burger and I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't want to go through the whole rigmarole. So I had to secretly dump it without them seeing that I dumped it.
It's like the shot, right? When you go and take a shot and you go, and you like throw it over your shoulder.
Very drunk palm tree behind me. So what happened was, as you know, I'd had enough of watching West Ham. I've seen us lose 18 games this year. In person, like 14 games. It's just been really depressing. And I have found it affecting my mood because, you know, in this industry, as you know, you can't step away from it in the same way if I was like a banker. Yeah. And I am a massive banker, but not a literal banker. You can walk away from these things and be like, oh, well, you know what, cut it off and focus on other things. I come in on Monday morning and I look at all the games and do some analysis and we talk about it. So I decided to not do it. So what we did, we went to our street party in our street, and then I came back inside and I texted a friend of mine and I said, look, at full time, so it was 7 p.m. UK time, the Man United game on Sunday, weird time. I said, text me at 9 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock UK time, just text me yes or no. Just text me yes or no.
Yeah.
Because either way, I'm going to like know the result and watch the highlights. But if you text me yes, I'll watch the entirety of the game. Otherwise, no, see the result, watch the highlights. And I watched, instead of watching West Ham Man United live, I watched a 1 hour documentary on the making of and distribution of rice pudding. Now, rice pudding, for the American audience who won't know that, is a kind of super gross dish that only the English eat. I know that's a very large category of things, but essentially it's a very specific type of rice that you mix with kind of cream and milk, and they cook it in a can at the Ambrosia factory in like Devon in England. And it's very popular with kind of former English people in America, Australia and whatnot. So I watched an hour documentary on that. Then I got a text from Brian Dunseth.
Oh, I've got the receipts.
I got a text from Dunny during the game to say, what was it? Were you the saying it's happening?
Here, I'll read me. You read you. Ready?
Okay.
Only we could make West Ham look like the best Real Madrid team of all time. Sorry, Tim.
I'm watching a documentary about how they make rice pudding.
I'd rather be watching that.
Why? Is it over?
It was over before it started.
No, seriously. I'm genuinely not watching.
A betting man would suggest David De Gea is the star of your rice pudding documentary. There's enough time left for me to rip out what is ever left of my pubic hair.
Your cryptic texts are not helping in any way.
Neither is this performance. It's over.
Thank. Sorry, Tim. So I didn't watch it live. I did watch it back. I also got drawn in at halftime because my friend Adam texted me. He texted me and was like, that's handball. And I was like, oh, what? Picked up my phone, saw it online. It was obviously handball. It's madness to our conversation last week. You can't watch that on TV and give it as a handball because it quite literally is. But we'll maybe get into that later. But look, it's over now. So I will talk about West Ham on the show in terms of Conference League, which is now the only thing that matters because there's no way Leeds or Leicester win their final 3 games of the season and West Ham get nothing from where they are. So they are safe now. And so the league doesn't matter now. So terrific. So I'll talk about that. But in terms of them in the league, Danny, I'm not going to bring them up again. That's exciting for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know what's happened? I hate that this has happened. Something has happened, and I'm not sure when it happened, but I can kind of pinpoint the exact timeline. So I'm not sure when, but I can kind of exactly point to Manchester United up, scoring goals against Sevilla, first leg, crumble, second leg up 2-0. I go to the TV station, crumble. The lead against Tottenham, up 2-0, crumble. And then this game, I don't want to watch. You've double jinxed me into feeling like somehow this is my fault. I don't know how it's fucking my fault. Sorry, Tim. I got super pissed this weekend. It is ruining my mood. These results are ruining my mood. I'm getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, Tom Rennie, based on these results because they're so avoidable.
Yeah.
All of these results are so avoidable. And yet here we are. It's gotten to the point where now I am thinking that I am the problem watching Manchester United.
Do you know the other thing that annoyed me about this game before we move off it is that, so we've been doing this podcast for about a year and West Ham played each other, was it 3 times last year? 3 times, I think. Yeah. In the 2 league games that were won by Manchester United, we did a bet. One was the hot sauce, which I'm not particularly strong at doing. And the other one was a shot of bourbon for the show. And you won them both. We didn't do it for the cup game, which West Ham won.
Yeah.
And then we didn't do it for this league game because I thought, you know what? I'm fed up of drinking hot sauce on this podcast. So I didn't do it. And then the moment we won and we had that text exchange, I thought, God, I could have made him like down some Carolina Reaper during the program, but I wasn't brave enough. I wasn't bold enough. So next time, folks, maybe.
Fortune favors the bold.
Probably not. I want to start today, Danny, by talking about relegation. Because it's a conversation you have a lot in America about whether you should do it, whether you should not do it, what the next kind of phase 3 of MLS is, if you like, maybe phase 4. And I can talk to you about this now from a more neutral perspective, as opposed to it completely stressing me out all day and all night. And let me tell you this, and this goes to the games on Monday, which, by the way, Fulham 5, Leicester 3, Brighton 1, Everton 5, Crazy. Nottingham Forest 4, Southampton 3. Just a classic day of Barclays. Elite level day of Barclays there on Monday. Amazing as well, it was a bank holiday in the UK, so a couple of these games were not on TV, and 2 of the early games were so low priority, like SiriusXM kept its regular programming on the main channel and bumped me over to a secondary channel because they were like, oh, Fulham Leicester, no, we'll keep Tommy Smith and Rodney Marshall instead, which, to be fair, you've got the talent, use it.
Made a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense, I suppose. But like when you're in it, a supporter of a team in it, and I want to talk about the footballer perspective a little bit later, but when you're watching it as an observer and you're in it, it's so stressful. It's so all-encompassing because if you get relegated, it's not like, oh, we didn't win a trophy this year, or it's not like, oh, we didn't make the playoffs this year. It is so damaging. And this might be different if it comes into MLS, and it's certainly different in other countries where the financial rewards of the Premier League is not exactly the same as the league below. You go from Serie A to Serie B, your Sampdoria up, how much loss is there? There's a lot, of course, it's significant, but it's not potentially catastrophic for your incredible spending that you've had. And when you're in it, you roll over your mind like, oh, what happens if we go down? Well, of course, we lose our best 2, 3, 4 best players. Obviously, they go. And then what happens? We then lose the TV money, so we can't then bring better replacements in or equal replacements in, so we have a worse squad. Then what happens? Everyone in that division below is desperate to beat you because you're the Premier League club, you're Billy Big Bollocks in this league, you're the Man United of this league all of a sudden, and everyone ups their game when they try and beat you and yada, yada, yada. So all this comes into play. Then you've got to get out of this scramble of a league, which is the Championship, which is so incredibly unpredictable that this weekend, which was the final day of the regular season, Millwall were going to be in the playoffs. They were 3-1 up at home against Blackburn Rovers, lost 4-3 in the end. And then Sunderland, remember Sunderland, they were down in League One only last season. They squeaked into the playoffs on the final day of playoffs, which include Luton Town, who have only got a stadium of 8,000 people. And one of the stands is literally a house. Like it's extraordinary. And you're in that competition and you're like Reading, who've just gone down to League One, or you're Cardiff, who stayed up because Reading had a point deduction, teams that have been in the Premier League. So look, it's a quagmire to get out of. You've got all that going through your mind. You're thinking about Reading, you're thinking about Cardiff, and then you're watching it, standing back from it. And it's like the stress, Dunny, the stress levels, what is on the line of it. And that leads to, I think, this incredible set of games, this extraordinary drama we had on Monday.
It is incredible. And I've told this story before, even though I'm an American and I played a majority of my career in Major League Soccer, and I understand the complexities in the conversation with promotion relegation and this conversation about the investment of Major League Soccer and the security of these owners, knowing that they are buying something that there is no threat of relegation, that they're not going to lose their money based on one season. We're talking less than 30 years, right? Less than 30 years. But I did, as a player, experience relegation and the relegation battle. I was in Sweden. I was in a contract dispute with Major League Soccer. Dallas Bern would not re-sign me. They would not pick up my option, but they would not trade me. And so I ended up going to Sweden, and I played for a small club called Boden BK. And we struggled. We had a bunch of injuries to attacking players, and we struggled throughout the course of the season. And it came down to the final day of the season. And we went away from home, and we ended up winning. And Woldy Harris, Jamaican international, currently the assistant coach of Colorado Rapids, scored the game-winning goal. And we stayed up. And you could feel the pride from the players that played in Boden, or that were from Luleå, or that were within a 50-mile radius, because this was at the time the biggest club in the area, in the northern part of Sweden. And it was so cool that the moment that we landed back in Luleå, the supporters were inside of the airport waiting for us. And so myself being the captain and one of the local Swedish guys being the co-captain, we kind of led the team off. And you could feel how important it was, as my phone rings, thanks Trey Fitzgerald. You could feel how important it was to not only the fans, but for the city itself and the subsequent celebration, the newspapers, and keeping the team up. So it does matter. But I'll tell you what's crazy. It only matters. It doesn't say not only matters. It matters to most to those that grew up within the club, that they identify as the club. And so for foreign players like myself, it was a little bit different. We didn't want that tag of being a part of a relegation team as a part of our history. But at the same time, we weren't included. It wasn't in our DNA. It was different. We could walk away. We could go. Sheridan Shaqiri, pensive, looking in the stands of Stoke City. This sucks. Off to Liverpool. Like, it's different. It's a different feel. So what we're looking at now, I think, is a couple different things. We're looking at the physical side. We're looking at the mental side. We're looking at the DNA of the club and the fan base and the importance of staying up. And we're also looking at the intensity, right? Just the grit and nails and biting your fingernails, and like, you're living and breathing on every single decision that's made, from the team itself being named to the substitution patterns to the referee decisions and the VAR non-calls and all of these things. And it led to one fucking incredible Monday afternoon. Sorry, Tim.
I want to start with Leicester, because I would be gutted if they got relegated, actually. Like, I want them all to stay up. I wish you all well. As long as you're below West Ham and West Ham stay up, I wish you all well, right? I've got no real agenda here against any of the teams that are in this relegation battle. But Leicester have brought us so much as, a generation of football fans, certainly in America, but even in England, they gave us all some hope that something else could happen, not just sovereign wealth funds and the teams that were good in 1962. If you have a great season, you can achieve this amazing thing. And we've got to remember as well, they got to the Champions League quarterfinal the following year as well. So, what a journey that would have been for the Leicester fans. So I don't want them to go down. They brought so much to the league. They brought more in their time in the league than, Everton have for 15, 20 years, right? I was covering that game for Premier League Live the weekend, the 5-3 loss against Fulham. And I've almost got to apologize to full America fans who tuned in from the US, because we just didn't really talk about Fulham, Chris Perry and I. We barely brought them up because they've done an incredible job, Fulham. 13 wins by that point, 14 now following the weekend. Season's over, job done, yada, yada, yada. We were just like, what a must-win game this is. Leicester have got huge, awful games coming up. Liverpool Monday Night Football. And we just kept talking about must-win game, must not lose game. Huge game. They find themselves behind in 10 minutes. Every goal they conceded was more comical than the last. I mean, we actually said in commentary, why has Dean Smith and none of his players ever seen an episode of the program Premier League Years, which is a common like filler program they have on Sky Sports in the UK where they show the best of every Premier League year, because Willian has been scoring those goals for 10 of them. And yet they never seem to have scouted it, which was infuriating to us on commentary. You know, he's going to do the Arjen Robben thing. Yeah. He's not going to shoot on the first cut. He's going to shoot on the second cut. So don't let him cut inside. Yeah. And yet they kept doing it, which was infuriating. But, I mean, the way Leicester played, defensively awful. They looked like a team that had a new coach, and Dean Smith only came in to replace Brendan Rodgers on the 10th of April. No manager has ever come in that late and kept a team up. So that should be alarm bells already for everyone at Leicester City. It was too late to sack Rodgers. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying there were obvious times, World Cup, January, early March, they were all there, and they waited far too long for a new boss to have any sort of massive impact, apart from a brief bounce, which they had in a couple of games. But I was shocked at the way they played. I was shocked that James Maddison to the BBC after the game said they were not hungry enough. I was shocked that they said to Dean Smith after the game, or Dean Smith said to the media that his players struggled under the weight of the game, the pressure of the game, the expectation of the game. And Danny, I'd love your view on that from an observer of this team, an observer of the game, but also from your experience of being in relegation battles and teams that have got a goal which they're not going to achieve because of what's happened here. Because to not be up for that game, to not be ready for that game, to have not scouted Fulham to the degree that was required, to concede 5 of the most comical goals you've seen all season, and to look just like beaten as you come out. Yeah. I could not believe it, frankly.
Yeah. So trying to figure out the best way to attack this. I think the broad stroke of saying like they're not up for it. Right. It's one of the easiest descriptions, and at the same time, it's one of the laziest, right? Because you're saying like, oh, they weren't up for the competition. Well, they just got beat, right? On the day, they got outcompeted, they got out tacticked, and at the end of the day, they just got beat. Those moments, just decisive moments. But when you're conceding 5 goals, it's different. You know, the decisive moments between a 4-3 win and a 4-3 loss between Forest and Southampton, those are literal moments. You know, you're there. There's a lot of them, but the game's so tight. It's a completely different conversation. But we're talking about the when we say we're not up for it, what we're really saying is we lost the physical battle. We lost the physical battle. Mentally, we weren't sharp enough. And those moments where we needed a defender to press instead of sit back, or we needed a tackle to get the outside of the foot on the ball instead of the inside of the foot, or we needed a shoulder that was shoulder to shoulder, not shoulder to the back of the, like all of these little things lead to these minuscule moments that add up to big, big, big goal scoring opportunities. So I think when we do this thing, when we're saying we're not up for it, it's the eyeball test. It's literally dumbing the game down to its most simple form and getting stuck in. Sorry, Tim. Like, that's what it is, getting stuck in. Because I can glean into this mentality, what happens. Let's get them. Sorry, Tim. Like, let's go. Like, let's stick them. Let's get stuck in. Set the tone early. Make it so they understand that we're up for this.
So why isn't it there? Why isn't it there in this example? Why fatigue. Is that not there?
I think it's mental, and I am sympathetic to the idea that the weight of the moment, the game, becomes such a mental slog. You get nervous because I can tell you what happens. You when you go out for warm up, there's going to be a certain group of players that are going to be completely unaffected. Then there's going to be a certain group of players that need a good first touch. Right? They need a good first touch, good pass to get themselves into the rhythm, and it's confidence. And I can tell you for me, I had a certain way of going about things to get me into being that confident player for my first touch. And it could be from the same repetition of socks and shin guards and putting on your boots and tying your right foot laces before left foot laces. It could be just the little things of like when you run out on the field, you do a jump, you do a skip. Some guys bless themselves. Then you go grab a ball, you get a first couple of touches, you start to juggle a little bit. And if your juggle's off, you're like, oh, it's going to be one of those days. And do I have to say sorry? I'm sorry, Tim. I'll
yes,
say sorry,
for swear words, you do. Yes, you absolutely do.
But is sorry? That's not really. What if I say, do I have to apologize then?
Think about if you would say it on like a children's TV network.
Okay. Lo siento, Tim. Lo siento. So I think what you have to, again, we're doing these things where we're like white lines, 90 minutes, let's judge. But sometimes the psychology of it, like if you go play Man City at Etihad, 99% of the teams that they play have already lost before they even walk on the field.
Yeah.
Because it's the moment, right? They know who they're going up against. And I think in situations like this, if Dean Smith is going to say that, if James Maddison is going to inflect upon that, well, then you're saying psychologically, this is a team that's not in a great place. And subsequently, that would reflect on where they are in the standings.
I mean, next up for them, Liverpool at home, Monday Night Football, Newcastle away. And then for them, I mean, a bit of luck that West Ham might be going towards the European final. If not, they've got nothing to play for. So there's a winnable game there. The others, because of that awful loss, they've got to get something from Liverpool or Newcastle. You don't see the team. I didn't see a team this weekend that seemed capable of that. And in terms of that pressure, I find this fascinating. It's why I love the relegation battle when my team is not in it, because when you're at the top end and you're talking about playoffs, you're talking about Champions League qualification, whatever, and we talk about, oh, they're 4 points behind with 3 games to play, and you think they could do that. You think they could do it because they win. Yeah. They win, and a win is a doable, achievable thing. Right now, a win for Leicester is like, finding the Holy Grail. It's you can't understand how you cross that bridge. There's no bridge here. How am I walking across it? It's extraordinary. They're doing it and they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And then when you get one, the size of it, what it can do for the club, it's difficult to kind of explain it here. Maybe we can explain it by talking about Everton, because that pressure there this weekend. Danny, you and I did a show on, must have been Friday Grumpy Pundit show on Sirius XM FC, where we spoke about Brighton, and they just beaten Man U on the Thursday night. And we spoke about the quality of football. We spoke about, how amazing they had been. Not maybe getting the win some of their performances had deserved, but the quality of football, the speed, to the point where, Pep Guardiola, the most influential coach of the last 20 years in football, is saying, we need to do what Brighton are doing.
Yeah.
I don't think he's doing it in the kind of, maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek way he did when he was asked about Sam Allardyce. I genuinely think Guardiola watches that and goes, sorry, Tim, that's a swear word. Just so you know, that's incredible. We've got to do that. A couple of days later, they're beaten for 5 by an Everton team who had not won since March. They'd not won away since beating Southampton under Frank Lampard. It was on the line there for Leicester, and Leicester chucked it. It was on the line for Everton, and something about that group, something about that manager, something about that opponent, something that makes football the best sport in the world, turned that into a result that not one person on God's green earth thought was going to come in. Danny, tell us how something like that happens.
Well, I can tell you from a Manchester United standpoint that I was infuriated with what I was watching, because Brighton systematically was taking Manchester United apart. And to do so, you have to have a certain mentality. And that certainly was not the case. And I think that was fully reflected in De Zerbi's halftime adjustments and bringing on 4 new players. But also speaking to, you can't live on the past. You can't live on what you did on Thursday. The only thing that matters is that first 45-minute performance. And it was very evident by the changes that it suggested who he was incredibly unhappy with, and he was going to be willing to sacrifice. And they looked better in the second half, but this was just a complete demolition job. Decore getting a couple, popping up in dangerous places. He looked like, he looked like he could have slid into Real Madrid and looked the part. And listen, as much as I have given credit to Brighton, and rightfully so, they deserve so much credit this year for everything that they've navigated from day one, from losing players to losing manager, to losing backroom staff, to losing even more backroom staff, to the threat of even more players wanting to leave. Trossard does leave. Caicedo is forced to stay. Blah, 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 blah. It's been a hell of a season. But old Deutsche shows up. And next thing you know, I think we learned two things. Number one, Daichi effect is still 100% in effect. But two, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a huge piece of the puzzle to any type of success that Everton needs to have.
Let me ask this question. I think this is really fascinating because we're recording this before the first leg of Real Madrid Man City in the Champions League. And I was previewing it on today's Sirius XM show. And everyone we speak to, and when we bring in any analysis of Real Madrid, it's always, yeah, but they're Real Madrid, they're going to win. Right? And it goes to the conversation about Germany, right? The German national team. Football is a game played between two teams for 90 minutes and the Germans win on penalties, right? That's one of the old sayings of English football because it's, all football really. Everton don't get relegated. Like, they haven't been relegated since, I think, 1953. They're one of the Premier League's ever-presents and foundational members. And in the last few years, they have been circling the plug hole. And every year, same thing happens. We get to January, February, manager sacked. There's then some games they win, a drop-off, then a crescendo at the end, followed by a pitch invasion where a fan tries to offer out Patrick Vieira. Good luck with that. And they've done it again. Danny, how much does the badge, the club, the legacy, how much does that play into something like this game on Monday between Brighton and Everton? Because, looking at what's left for them, it's Man City this weekend. Look, you ain't going to win that game, right? You're just not going to win it. Even with the Real Madrid sandwich, you're still not going to back Everton to win it. If they do, it would be genuinely incredible. Then it's Wolves and it's Bournemouth. They've gone from goners to more likely to stay up than not because of this victory. I just wonder how much part of that is the fact that this is a club that doesn't go down. And if it comes to the clutch moment, they're going to deliver.
Well, I think what's even more interesting is when we went back and we had those, 9 teams within 4 points of each other a couple weeks ago. Everton's only won one game. One game, one win, 3 losses, and 3 draws. But as we know, 6 points makes a huge difference because there hasn't been a lot of teams that have proven that they can consistently wiggle some points out of some of these matches. And it is fascinating because I just go back to when Yerry Mina was accosted in the street by the fans, when Anthony Gordon was shouted down for the desire to leave in January and to go to Newcastle United, and how many times you could see how passionate the fan base was in their continued voicing of opinion that they want Moshiri as far away from the club as possible. And they want, at some point, some type of competent leadership that can prove that they can invest in players as opposed to just take the, I would say, fringe players out of all of the other top 6 teams and spending a crazy amount of money on them for them to just be incredibly average for them. But yeah, it's one of those where I think from an American perspective, you feel like only Tim Howard could probably do justice to what it means for this fan base and what it means for that city to represent that club. Because I think, no disrespect to Liverpool, because obviously Liverpool's done an incredible job and they are an incredible club. But to be Everton, to be, quote unquote, the little brother, if you will, I just think there's this mentality. Sorry, Tim, I've cursed a lot today. Like, it ain't happening. Nah, it ain't happening. And that's what you feel like. Nah, it ain't happening. We're not going down.
Yeah.
And they might not be playing well, but they're figuring out a way to dumb it down, to grind out results. And they looked like Real Madrid the other night.
And yeah, they do it every year. They've done it again. I can't see them going down from this point. Final question on relegation for now. I wanted to ask you briefly about Nottingham Forest, the team you used to love. Now you hate them, of course, for personal reasons. The victory over Southampton, God bless them, they're going to be gone this weekend. 4-3 victory.
Hmm.
30 players bought in. 30 players in two windows, actually, after promotion, but in one season. The entirety of the last team, I think, bar 2 players in the team against Southampton on Monday, gone. Then you add to that 13 players out injured, including Dean Henderson, who, they signed Keylor Navas to cover him, so fine, but still, he was incredible the first half of the season. To go through all of that and to get to a point where you might actually stay up and stick with a manager in Steve Cooper, who most of us thought would be gone 3, 4, 5 times over in this climate in that club.
Yeah.
Look, not safe yet. It's not over yet. I don't want to take any hope away from some of the teams that are down there. They've still got Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace to come. So it ain't over. But again, pressure scenario, mental season, a scenario that no one has ever dealt with before, which is 2 entire teams being built for you. I mean, just an incredible position to be in. A great win against Southampton when it could have gone either way, that game as well.
Yeah, I think we're seeing the players completely adapt at this point. You almost feel like if they had 10 to 15 more games, they'd probably be a mid-table team. But as we've seen with Chelsea, it is incredibly difficult to bring in so many new players and think that you're going to have some type of consistency or rhythm because the familiarity, it's just difficult. I would speak to everybody can tell when you're a good player, but do you want the checking ball? Do you want an inside shoulder? Do you check and spin into space? Like, what are your frequencies and your movements and your understandings? And, can you get yourself out of pressure? Can I play you under pressure? Do I have to bypass? Like all these little things you only learn by playing. And there's a lot that you learn in training, but it's different in a game scenario because you're just training against each other. So you're already familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of each other. But when you're playing opponents, it's a different experience, completely different experience. Yeah, I think it's obviously taken way too long, obviously with ownership and the significant amount of money and maybe the fraying of relationships behind the scenes with regards to accountability, who's to blame, who needs to go, who needs to be fired, who ultimately was in charge of the decisions for these players or certain players, and the accountability and responsibility. Where did it lie? Where did it fall? There is something to be said about sticking with Steve Cooper. And I would be really interested to see that even if he keeps them up, which I do think he keeps them up, I could see Steve Cooper walking away from this mess at the end of the season and being in line to take a more stable position with another club. Because I think even when they've lost these games, you still see the identity of the way that he wants Nottingham Forest to play.
You know what's interesting as well to me about it is that, there's been too many sackings this year, right? There has been too many sackings. It got ridiculous at one point that everyone seemed to be getting sacked. And the reason it happens, and I get it, we've spoken about it, everyone listening to this will understand it, it's panic. It's panic because you cannot be relegated from this league for reasons that we've discussed already, but you also at the top end can't afford to miss out on Champions League football, blah, blah, blah. You kind of budget for the next year, your star players, all of that. Your planning revolves around a certain thing. But what I hope people have learned this year, and maybe I need to have learned this as well. I've called for my manager to be sacked a couple of times this season, but I'm a fan. I'm allowed that. If you can't get better, if the managerial change is not an upgrade, you simply shouldn't do it. And if we look at this, Southampton are going down. They're going down because maybe Hasenhüttl should have gone earlier. I accept that argument from Southampton fans that have made it. But they replaced him with Nathan Jones, maybe the worst managerial appointment of the last few years in the Premier League. Someone who just seemed to come in, piss off everyone, then shoot off. He basically was the best man's mate at a wedding who ruined the best man's speech, all over the bathroom floor and missed the toilet bowl, and then punched the bride. That was basically Nathan Jones. Terrible appointment. Really came across badly. Everybody hated him in the end. I'm sure he'll go on to better things, but that's how he came across. You then bring in Ruben Selles, who's essentially like just a random member of staff. Like they just were like, well, who's left? Got the receptionist, I guess. Okay, Tina, you're in. 20 games to save us. And then he dressed in these stupid little roll necks. Right, useless. Leeds United. You get rid of Jesse Marsch. Again, I'm happy for that to happen. Do it, don't do it. Leeds fans will tell us better than we will. You bring in Javi Gracia. To what improvement? I don't know. And now Big Sam. I mean, is that a joke? Big Sam for 4 games? We spoke about this at length last week. It's insanity to hire a 68-year-old who 2 weeks ago was trying to work out how the bionic bar worked on a cruise. And now he's your manager for Man City away. Madness. Leicester City. Rodgers could have gone for months and months and months. You do it for Dean Smith, who took Norwich down. They hate him at Norwich for last season, and you do it far too late. Everton, Deitch might work out, but again, you're going to be very close to it. And then you look at Nottingham Forest, who stuck with Cooper. David Moyes, who thanked his owners this week for keeping him in a job. And I think he was right to do that, actually, because I think a lot of other clubs would have sacked him. And even Gary O'Neill, who came in to replace Scott Parker, just above him in the table, he's been there since August. He could have gone up loads of times before that incredible run in April. So, Dunny, if we learn anything from this year, I hope it's feel free to remove your head coach. But number one, if they're going to come in, you've got to give them some time to change things. Yeah. And number two, is it an upgrade? And if it's not an upgrade, right, let's say we start afresh next season. Is there any scenario Leicester City are appointing a new manager, take away the baggage? My options are Brendan Rodgers or Dean Smith. They are ever, with all due respect, going to pick Dean Smith. And if the answer is no, then you kind of got to dance with the one that brung you.
Yeah, no, and it also, the thing that's always been curious to me about this conversation is how many clubs were just blissfully unaware that they were going to have to make a change. And they had zero preparation, zero plan. It has never made sense to me. I don't care how much of a phenomenal relationship you can have between your owner, the board, and the manager. There's always got to be at least a 3-man shortlist. At least that's available, updated currently. It's the same identity of like your scouting system and your network and your assistant coaches and how you don't have, I'd say this all the time with Major League Soccer, a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, but you have to have players in every single position that you're looking at throughout the league and saying, I like him. Let's put him on the board. And then just hide the board. Like get one of those shutters, hide the board. But the board's already there, but you just keep the shutters. But here's the board. This is my ideal team. But no, we're going to. So what's, if you're Leeds United, okay, Jesse Marsch, your head coach, here's your board. You got 3 guys. Hey, so if anything goes wrong, we're going to go with these 3 guys. Okay, ready? Nope. Oh, hey, what's up, Jesse? How are you? No, everything's great, man. Yeah. No, hey, tough game this weekend. Good luck next weekend, okay? Okay, good to see you. Hey, here's the board. Okay, so if we're going to make this change, these are the 3 guys we have. Okay, you call the intermediary. Let's get in contact, gauge interest. No, nothing serious. Like, hey, if we were to make a change, like, would you be like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Even these clubs, I don't get it. And Major League Soccer, head coach New York Red Bulls, Garrett Struber just got fired. Ezra Hendrickson just gets fired. Both clubs say we're not making a change for the rest of the year. These guys are going to be in charge. What are we talking about here? It's fucking May. So God, I'm cursing way too much today. Sorry, Tim. It's May. This season ends in December. And May? Like what? I just don't. I don't understand. If you're getting to the point and you are going to make a change, how you don't have at least 3 targets ready to go, available, that when these decisions are made, you're out. Like, okay, execute, go, get the money, grab the purse, send the bag, back up the Brinks truck, get this guy, get your effing guy. See, I didn't curse right there. It's good.
I mean, it is just mad, but also, if you've got someone in mind, go get them. To your point, I think you're absolutely right. And if you don't, you can't make a change. If you're not improving, don't make a change. And I think hopefully that's something we might well have learned this year. Probably not. Danny, kind of other bits I wanted to bring up on the show before we're out of time today. I don't want to do too much terrible refereeing, but there was a couple of decisions this weekend that I really did want to talk
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm done.
I've got to ask
I'm
you.
done.
No,
I don't
we're
want
not
to talk
done.
about it. No.
We can't be done.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be talking about. I'm going to curse again. See, you've just wound me up.
Don't do it.
I'm like a top. I'm like a top. Right now, I'm so pissed about United that then when I see the handballs and the VARs, I can't talk about it anymore. I'm so incredibly infuriated by what I'm seeing and the stupidity in which this conversation about clear and obvious. It's I almost cursed again. Of course it's a handball. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't. There's so many like for like instances we're seeing, which are the same thing over and over and over. And I don't care how many times Howard Webb has to apologize and go meet the manager at the training facility during the week. I don't care about how we're going to do this new TV show that's going to be, it's going to be super transparent and we're going to explain all of it and you'll understand what we're thinking. This isn't the point of VAR. This is not what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be clear-cut and simple. And I know things get incredibly complex, but it can't be that effing complex when literally everybody around the world can see exactly what just happened. And yet VAR doesn't suggest to the referee, hey, go to the monitor and take a look. Think you might have screwed this one up. I can't. Like, I'm at my wit's end with it. It's you got me last week going on this and this rant to the point where, like, Bennett, like, what's the point anymore? What's the point? If we can't get this right, why are we even using it? That's where I'm at right now. I can't. I'm over it.
Well, I'm going to do it.
I just talked about it.
No, I mean, you did. I drew you in. That was the skill of my presenting there. But I mean, just there's two this weekend. There's more than that, but there was two this weekend that really I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I can't believe how dumb this is. I can't believe they've made me Mr. Let's get VAR in because we need it, because I'm fed up of these terrible decisions happening and ruining the sport and everything favoring the big clubs and yada, yada, yada. The Lindelof handball, right? Their whole defense is that it was in line with his body. And I think, yeah, okay, where was his arm going to go is one conversation you can have until he tries to catch it. Until Lindelof actually moves his arm to try and catch it, I'm on board. I've got it. It's like the Arsenal-Newcastle one. Fine, right? Jakob Kivior, it hits his arm, but his arm is down by his side. He doesn't move his arm to the ball, so fine. No worries. Victor Lindelof actively moves his arm towards the ball to try and alter its direction. And some guy watched that on a video replay and was like, well, the referee's not giving it here. So is this something that meets the high bar for a clear and obvious overturn for me to tell him that he has f***ed this up? Sorry, Tim. This episode's never coming out.
Never coming out.
Never coming out. But I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get how it's even possible. Just is it the right or wrong decision? What is the decision? Forget the referee on the field. Forget clear and obvious. If you're going to continue with this ridiculousness, then just come to a situation where all you're trying to do is find out whether it's a yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no. Right or wrong. Is it or isn't it? That's it. Not back up your mate or not back up your mate. The referee on the field is the ultimate arbiter or not. None of it. Just, is he right? And if he's right, go with it. If he's wrong, whatever. And people might say to me, and this happened to me on Twitter, that Jermaine Genius on commentary on BT Sport said that he thought it wasn't a penalty. Everyone else, 62,500 inside the stadium, all the pundits that were on the kind of gantry, whatever, all said it was. But the response was, yeah, but Genius didn't think it was a penalty. So in all these conversations, there's an element of doubt. Well, no. If you're in a conversation with 100 people and 99 think it is and one thinks it isn't, you go with that consensus, right? It's like vaccine mandates. Yeah, it's like that sort of thing. If all these people are getting vaccinated and some people aren't, if 99 doctors think we should get vaccinated and one of them is a crackhead who goes on, then you've got to go with the 99 doctors, have you not? Then the other guy who's obviously insane, who might call themselves eminent, but you go with a vast majority. So I just couldn't believe it. Don't believe it. Refuse to believe it. But there we are. The other one, though, was even worse for me. Even worse because I get why they screwed up handball, because they're second guessing, third guessing, fourth guessing them. And it doesn't get any attention and won't, because it was Nottingham Forest Southampton. But Romeo Lavia, right? He jumps out of the way of a challenge from Sam Surridge. So this is a bit like Darwin Núñez last week. And I said to you, if you show this to a non-football fan, they would say, red shirt jumps into white shirt. Can't be a penalty, right? In this one, Romeo Lavia looks like there's going to be a foul on him. So he just jumps. He just jumps on the ground. Now, I have full sympathy for a referee who gets conned by a dive, right? Someone looked at that on the telly. I think it was Paul Tierney. I agree with Klopp. Paul Tierney's watching this on the telly. He watches it back and he sees this clear dive, this evident, clear, no contact, no foul, nothing happened dive. In his mind, he goes, well, Oliver's given this. Do I have enough evidence to overturn this? Not right or wrong. And they give the penalty. There's no foul. There's no foul here. And yet they still give it. And in the end, it's Southampton's third consolation goal, and it doesn't matter. But it does matter, doesn't it? It does matter. I can't believe it. Anyway.
Again, I mean, the solution could be as easy as just getting a normal person with no skin in the game off the street and just saying, instead of this clear and obvious, hey, what do you think? Here's the law of the game. This is where the ball needs to hit the player in the arm, and this will be judged handling inside the box. It'll be a penalty. Well, yeah, the ball's, look at the silhouette of his body. Yeah, of course. It hit him in, the handball. Ball. Yeah, my hand's right here. Ball hits me in the arm. Penalty. Oh, well, what about the line? What about the line of his t-shirt? What if he's wearing really short? What if they're like really tight? And you're like, is he flexing? Is it like flex tight or no? No, it's handball. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just incredible. Like every single weekend, week. We're having the same conversation. Every single week.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we're out of time. Ilkay Gundogan has scored 2 goals in the game between Man City and Leeds United. There's a penalty given to Manchester City, not United. And he takes the penalty and misses it when Erling Haaland's on the field. What is that about?
Yeah, Erling gave it to him. Erling wanted him to have his hat trick. That's just good vibes. That's a good vibe feel. I can understand now. Obviously, it doesn't work, and Pep loses his. And next thing, God, I did it again. Sorry, Tim. Pep reverse. Pep loses he pops his top. He's not happy, and that's why he's saying. And then all of a sudden, now Big Sam and Leeds United have a little bit more confidence. The game was done and dusted. It was one-way traffic. It should have been 3-0. Instead, it's 2-1. Gets a little bit nervy at the end. But again, for Erling Haaland, he's trying to. And listen, by the way, we talk about egos on these guys. Erling Haaland could continue to add to his goal-scoring mark, his goal-scoring tally, which is record-breaking. And instead, he must like Ilkay Gundogan so much that he's willing to give him the hat trick, to give him that moment. I mean, there's bonus money on the line here too. These are still goals. So, yeah, if he scores, we're not talking about it. It's 3-0. It's Ilkay Gundogan scores a hattie, and everybody's feels great. And now he misses confidence. Erling passes to it. He gets yelled at. Pep gets blustery in the final 3 or 4 minutes because all of a sudden Leeds put them under pressure after they scored their goal. So all things can be true, and it probably most benefited, I'd say, Big Sam, because now he can lean into, well, we only lost 2-1 at the Etihad. How many teams can say that? And, had a little bit of momentum at the end of the game.
Well, let me ask you this final question for today. Are games becoming a bit easy? Too easy for City, too easy for Arsenal. And because of that, there's been a lot of complacency recently. If you look at Arsenal, West Ham, for example, you look at Man City, Leicester, you look at this one this weekend. Is it just too easy for the teams at the top these days against the teams at the bottom? And it's giving us these grandstand finishes that maybe the game doesn't quite deserve.
Yeah, I don't know if it's too easy, because the Newcastle Arsenal game was a pretty fun, complex match where Arsenal was looking to rebound and still keep in touching distance, while Newcastle still has Champions League spot to play for, because I know there's only a few games left, but they're still not completely secure 100%. Plus the egotistical, hey, we want to take down Arsenal. We want to minimize the gap. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, listen, the flip side of that argument is it mental fatigue or physical fatigue? Physical fatigue right now that Erik ten Hag's side's dealing with, because they look nothing like when Aaron Wan-Bissaka looks tired, you know you got an issue, because he looked exhausted. Tracking back in that game.
But in that game as well, I mean, to that point, we need to start bringing in some sort of equal amount of rest for the two teams who play each other, don't we? I mean, I think this all the time. Like, I know it's not going to happen. It's unrealistic, but it was pretty evident in the Man U game against West Ham that Man United had played on the Thursday and West Ham played on the Wednesday. And in the previous week, West Ham had played on the Wednesday night and Crystal Palace had played on the Tuesday. It's evident who had the 24 hours extra rest.
Well, this is why I'm interested to see this weekend for Manchester United at home against Wolves, because for the first time I can remember, and I'm probably wrong because I usually am, but it's a full week's rest. It's a full week's rest for Manchester United. They haven't had that in, I think, 6 weeks, I want to say, between cup competitions and cup finals. So, yeah, exhausting season. And I think that's where you're going to get some results that your, for example, Leicester City, confidence, physical side of it. Who shows up. And I think that's why we always talk about these last couple of weeks of the season, last 4 weeks of the season, see some lopsided results. You can predict them like it's mid-season and it won't look anything like the sort. Half your games will be spot on. The other half will be nowhere close to what you could possibly predict. Because looking at our predictions, we all had 1-0, 2-0, 1-0 for those games, Fulham and Brighton Forest. And my maths aren't great. 8, 6, 14, 7. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of points. 23 goals scored in 3 matches. Pretty incredible.
You didn't have 5-3, 1-5, 4-3 in your predictor, no?
I had 1-0, 2-0, 1-0.
Rubbish. That's this week's Week in the Tackle podcast. That's Brian Dunseth. I'm Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey produced the program. We're back with a Week in the Tackle predicts the weekend on Friday. We'll see you then.